Hi everyone, it's me again. It's been a couple days or a week or whatever since I've vlogged. So I'm gonna vlog now. So I left off on me finding out about the affair, and we left it there. So this is going to be about pretty much the reaction and so on. So anyways, after I found out that he was being sued for child support, I went over to his mom's house because, like I told you in previous blogs, that they lived next door to us. And so I went over there, and I handed her that letter, and I asked her, did you know about this? Because he is a mama's boy to the T, like 100% mama's boy. And she told me she had no clue about it, and that she really, honestly, God didn't know. So anyways, I went home, and I called him at work, and I asked him who she was, and he just said, I'm sorry, and hung up on me. So I called him back, and I told him that he needed to explain what the hell was going on, and he hung up on me again. So I called back, and I told the person that answered the phone that they needed to put him on the phone because he was trying to avoid me. And if not, then, I wanted to talk to his boss. So anyways, he ended up getting back on the phone, and I informed him that if he hung up on me again, that I was going to be coming up to his work. And the last thing he wanted was his sergeant or captain to have me go up there and make a scene and tell all his business to all his employers or employees, coworkers, and so on about the shadiness that he did, and the fact that it's not going to look good on that department. So he didn't get into a lot of details about it. He said that, it happened one time, is what he told me, that he slept with her one time, and that was it. And we all know, hey, okay, one time, possibly it could happen at one point, right? So I started to go through our phone bill, and I was calling numbers that I didn't know. Well, I then at that point learned that the relationship went from March, April, end of March, beginning of April, all the way up until July. And that's not a one-time thing at all. That's a couple months situation. So I ended up Facebooking her. I found her on Facebook. How I found her on Facebook that night was I searched her name on Facebook, and I started sending him pictures of her. And I was like, well, is this her? Is this her? Is this her? And finally I came across her, and he had told me that, yes, that was her. But I found her on MySpace. I didn't know people were still using MySpace back in 2011, but obviously some people still had it. Anyways, and so I told him that he wasn't allowed to come home, that I wanted the divorce, and yada, yada, yada. So anyways, he wanted to talk about it. And so I was like, our marriage is over, but I'll hear you out. I went to my church. I cried. I prayed. I did all of it. And he and me sat down and talked, and he told me that it happened one time. Well, based off of when I talked to her, that wasn't the truth, that it had been going on for a while. So he finally openly admitted that it was going on, but that he told her straight up he was never going to leave me or his kids. And he openly admitted that that night we got into a big, big fight, and he called me a bitch and a whore and all that good stuff. It was the day that he had found out that she was pregnant with his child. And he didn't know how to deal with it at that point. Anyway, so when I was listening to him, and he finally told me, he said that a lot of it was because we were having problems in our marriage, and I wasn't giving him what he wanted, and she was doing everything he wanted. And I was like, okay, what is she doing that you're wanting that I'm not doing? Well, I hope there's no kids listening. I'm apologizing to anybody that's listening to this that may personally know me, but he told me that I wouldn't give him a blowjob as much as he wanted, or I wouldn't give him a blowjob whenever he wanted, or anything like that. And he goes, heck, you wouldn't do it at all. And I have a past, and I have a bad past, because I was married once before, and He doesn't know about that. He never took the time to find out what happened in that marriage to make me not like to do certain things, or why I don't do certain things. But he also didn't put in perspective that, and this is going to be me being 100% honest, he was a 1-minute man. And so I was like, you cheated on me for some head. That is exactly what I told him. And he was like, pretty much. And I'm sorry, it's funny now because you threw a whole family away so someone can blow you. Like, that's the stupidest thing, right? But anyways, so I didn't want nothing to do with him at that point. But like most women, we go through denial, and we go through those stages of being hurt and crying or whatever. So he and me went out one night, June 14th, June 15th, and we got drunk. Well, anyways, I ended up sleeping with him, and I ended up pregnant with my son. But I didn't think about pregnancy because at that point I was told I couldn't have kids because I was having a lot of issues with my monthly cycle, and I was having issues with other stuff. And so I went to a doctor, and they told me that my tubes are clogged up. Beyond having ovarian cysts that were expanding, I had other issues. So I ended up having to go in and have surgery to remove some of the issues that I was having. It was just, I was infertile. Well, obviously I wasn't, because I ended up pregnant with my son. So during this whole process of me finding out I was pregnant, I had found out at that point that in the state we're from, you cannot get divorced while you're pregnant, and you have to wait 6 months after the birth of your child to file for divorce because of hormonal purposes. So we went to marriage counseling. I never felt the same about him. I never trusted him. I did talk to her, and she had told me that he did tell her that he loved her, but he had no intentions on leaving us for her. And then I found out that the day she went and told him she was pregnant, this is kind of where I don't even know really the emotions I had, but when she told him she was pregnant, he told her to have an abortion, put the baby up for adoption, because he didn't want that child, which is fine. Anybody has that right not to want a child. But then he told her, which to me, if you don't want to be a part of a child's life and you're willing to help pay for an abortion, or you're willing to put it up for adoption, whatever. But when she said that she wasn't going to do any of it, he told me that he hoped that baby died because he doesn't care. That to me is the worst thing to say to anybody. Mainly because you chose to have that child. You chose to lay down with somebody without protection and get her pregnant. She did openly tell me that she did it on purpose and that she was going to take him to the bank, but she used other words. And she did. She gets her child support every month. That child is under insurance, and he pays for it every month. At the time when I was angry and he was going through all the court processes of the kid, I did tell him that child will never be welcomed in my home. I will never have anything to do with that kid. But a lot of that was anger. A lot of it was, you go through so many emotions, and when we were going through the court situation, I had just had my son, and it's one of those, how is one to feel when you find out that your kid was due on the same day her son was born, but different years. And because I'm a repeat C-section, he was actually supposed to be born on the same day her son was. And I told my doctor I will not have my child on that day, that she needs to do it 3 days later or 3 days earlier. But I would not give birth on that day. I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. So we ended up pushing it 3 days prior. So my son's birthday is 3 days before her son's birthday, but her son is 1 year older than my son. I had a lot of anger towards her, just because she knew we were married and she didn't care. And to me, yeah, it's not technically her fault, it's his fault because we were married. But on that same note, as a woman, or even a man, if you are trying to involve yourself with someone that is married, don't do it. They're married. Tell them to leave their spouse. Tell them to walk away. But don't go sleeping with someone's husband or someone's wife. That's like the lowest thing you can do. But through it all, he really never apologized for the affair. He never really made me feel like he regretted the affair. He never, nothing. And then I left him in March of 2014. I left him. And at that point, I had found out that while I was pregnant with my son, he was cheating on me with his now wife. And he had did it before she had got married. So I was approximately 6-7 months pregnant at this time, but I didn't know that. I learned a lot after I left him. I found out there was multiple women he had affairs on me with. The most embarrassing thing about finding out about the affair is having to go to the doctor. I didn't go to an off-the-wall doctor. I went to our family doctor and having to get an AIDS test done, an STD test, HIV, to make sure I don't have anything. That is the most embarrassing thing to do. And, you know, it's funny now, but when the doctor asked me why I was getting all these tests done, I told him, I said, because your boy couldn't keep his penis, or I said his dick in his pants. And he laughed about it. At the time, it wasn't funny. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed at the fact that here my husband is cheating on me and he doesn't see nothing wrong with it. He made up excuses for it. But my final line, and the reason why I finally up and left him, because I couldn't divorce him while I was pregnant, and I couldn't get divorced while I was, 6 months pregnant, until after my son was 6 months old. What really did it for me was we were outside playing. Our marriage was over. I had no respect for him. Let me rewind. I had no respect for him at all. I didn't care how he felt, didn't care what he thought. I was mainly just staying with him till I could figure out how to get out of there. And because I knew that the day I walked out of that house, my kids would not have a father. So I tried to suck it up. But my final straw was we were outside playing and he was out there doing something and my kids were climbing all over his truck. And he told the kids to stop because they're going to break something. And the kids had been climbing on his truck for years. Well, I told him, he goes, they're going to break something. It's my truck, da-da-da. And I said, okay, well, they're having fun. Play with your kids, And he was like, my truck and my stuff is more important than my children. And I said, you can replace anything they break, but you can't replace those kids. And he goes, he's aware that he can't replace those kids, but he would rather replace them than his vehicle and his items. And at that point, when he told me that more or less his kids don't mean crap to him, it was time to walk away. The whole time we were married, he has a son from a previous marriage, and then our 3 children. He never really did anything with them. I had to beg him to spend time with our kids. If I needed to go to the store, it wasn't, hey, I'm going to the store, I'm leaving the kids with you. It's, hey, I need to go to the store. Do you mind babysitting our children? He ain't babysitting our kids. Those are his children, but we were babysitting. And so when that happened with the stuff of his kids really didn't mean nothing to him, I left him. It was a few days before my son's birthday, 2nd birthday, I left him. And I started the process of divorce at that point. And I will pick up at this point to when I found out that he was once again cheating on me before I left him. And how I found out about the new girl who's now his wife and what has gone on with that situation, because I was almost arrested twice because of her. And it's just, we'll go from there. And then we're almost getting to the point where we are now, but we will talk about how I found out about the affair and the way he treated me and my kids after I left him. And so I'm going to shut up now, but y'all have a great night. Thank you. Bye.